welcome. It's still summer here in Minnesota, and we're thrilled to be here for a conversation with Kim, cocktail style. And I'm excited to have this conversation with Eric, but a couple of things I want to talk about first is I do want to thank our sponsors, because as you know, as the Chamber of Commerce, we exist to serve the business community, and all of you that help sponsor and invest in our work comes back to you tenfold. So I want to thank Xcel Energy. Where is Michelle Swanson? Raise your hand. Thank you so much for the great innovative work that you all are doing. And we've got a new sponsor to Conversations with Kim today. We've got Northwestern Health Sciences, the Worksite Right program. If Dr. Jim and Dr. Chad could raise their hands. I do want you to seek them out after the program and ask them about Worksite Right and find out if it's something that you could benefit from at your workplace. Okay, everybody agree? Okay, great, thank you. So we've got some board members here. I know Andrea Speck, the head of artistry, had to just leave. And it's her birthday. I think she just didn't want us to sing happy birthday. But raise your hand if you're a board member here with us today. We've got Barb Gurney, Councilman Tim Bussey. We've got our chair, Ken Vinge, and Michelle Swanson. Thank you guys so much for the ongoing support and the great work that you and energy that you give me on a daily basis, really. Thank you guys so much for being here. Any other elected officials? So I've been promoting the heck out of this event tonight because I am so thrilled to have met Eric Johnson. He is the City of Bloomington's new Community Development Director. And when you hear that title, probably a lot of different things come to mind, right? You know, he develops the community, essentially. But let me tell you about his background, because you're all going to be so impressed. And then we're going to have our conversation. But Eric's been here for about 5 months, and he leads 78 staff people over at the city. He works directly with Jamie on the leadership team. And yeah, hey, let's hear it for Jamie. Yeah. And they partner with the community. He partners with the community to enhance planning, economic development, and redevelopment activities. He promotes health and safety of the Bloomington residents, visitors, employers, and employees. Eric has been managing urban redevelopment issues for the public, private, and nonprofit sectors as the principal of his own consulting firm, so he's got some entrepreneurism. Urban Regeneration Advisors, and that is part of a national consulting network where he served as a senior consultant and special advisor on projects related to real estate market studies, data guy, economic impact analysis, data guy, urban development strategies. So he is the former Chief Development Officer for Horizon Development in Charlotte, North Carolina, Anna's area, and has held real estate director and management positions for the Cleveland Port Authority of Ohio and the City of Charlotte in North Carolina. He is also the Director of Housing and Urban Improvement for Pompano Beach in Florida. So he brings a lot of countrywide, nationwide experience. His academic profile is even more impressive. Listen up, y'all. He earned his PhD in Urban Affairs and Public Policy from the University of Delaware. And here's the Minnesota connection, a Master's of Public Administration from Minnesota State University in Mankato. And his BA in Political Science from Washburn University in Topeka, Kansas. And he is also an alumnus of the Harvard University Graduate School of Design, Advanced Management Development, and Program in Real Estate. Welcome, Eric. I've got a quick quote from Jamie. Eric has broad and diverse resume, correct? And working in different regions across the country, he brings an impressive amount of experience and that very impressive academic background. So out of quite a few applicants, I believe, Eric was chosen to replace a 40-year employee, Mr. Lee.
Yep, Larry.
Yep, and so this is exciting to have some change. We've had some great leadership over the years, and now it's time. What I find interesting about Eric is how quickly he's been observing the Bloomington community, and he's taken in all this information about what's going well, right? What things are going well? What things do we want to see change and be revitalized? I think in 5 months, he's really amassed a lot of information and idea generation. So here we're going to have a conversation and then definitely open up to y'all for some questions. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Great. Eric, thank you.
Thank you.
It is wonderful to see you. Tell us what has impacted you the most in 5 months in your position.
Well, first of all, let me say thank you for the opportunity, Kim. I'll tell you what has really impacted me in 5 months. Getting to see firsthand the untapped potential of Bloomington. So what I mean by that is the assets available that are present in Bloomington. So when I talk about that, I'm talking about a great park structure throughout the city, a great school system. I see access to pretty much anywhere you want to go, left, right direction. I see opportunities for development in areas that we never really thought about before. But what I also see, more importantly, is that Bloomington over the years, I'll say it this way, has done a good job, but now we're at a different point in the changing world environment, not just of development, but in cities in general. So what I see is a landscape of opportunity, or better yet, a canvas that we have an opportunity to do what I'm calling a suburban retrofit style strategy for Bloomington. Because let me just say this, in the Twin Cities region, it's not about competition for jobs. The challenge here is about the competition for people choosing to decide where they want to live in a region of good places to live. So as far as I'm concerned, there's not a bad place to live in this region. So the challenge really for Bloomington is really about, why would you choose Bloomington in a region of great places to live? So if you understand what I'm trying to say, is that Bloomington is at a point where it has to now say, what do we want to be? How are we going to get there? How are we going to accelerate getting there? You know, I don't know about you guys, but when I look at the Minnesota River Valley, is that, I'm saying that right? Right? I look at that as an asset. I look at the linkage between 494 coming down Lindale, whether you're going left or right, east, west, the potential is there. The question is, do we have the desire and drive to really get Bloomington to this next level? And let me just say this, because I've been staring at this one number. In 1970, Bloomington was 80-something thousand people. Fast forward 48 years later, Bloomington is still 80-something thousand people, but yet the region is growing at a projected 38, 36,000 people a year for the next 12, 15, 20 years, whatever the number is. Our challenge is, how do we get some of those people, young people in particular, to want to choose Bloomington? The school system could use new families coming in, right? We can use that energy. And it's not about saying you have to replace the past. It's about a balanced approach that takes advantage of both a combination of urban and suburban in a well-defined city. And lastly, this east-west divide. When I first got here, what I hear about this divide, I thought they were like gangs or something patrolling the east side, and it's like, don't go to the east side. You know, I'm like, wow, it must be horrible or something. But my point is, the one Bloomington narrative has to come alive and really mean one Bloomington. So that's really what I see. If I look at what I see in terms of city staff, we have an excellent staff. The council is really good to work with. I see the council as, I've worked with a lot of city councils in my lifetime, and I can say this, not because the councilman is here, it's just that they are grasping the issues of the day and recognizing that we have to move with some sort of expedient desire to get it done. So I'll just sort of end with that. So that's what I see.
Thank you. That's a lot that you've already observed, everybody, in 5 months. And so there's really nowhere to go but to start to implement these ideas as expediently and as thoroughly and thoughtfully as possible. We were having, speaking of West Bloomington, we were having a conversation over here over a glass of wine just a few minutes ago. We think that it was a developer, maybe Orrin Thompson perhaps, coined the phrase prestigious West Bloomington, and it stuck. I grew up in the northern suburbs. I grew up in Coon Rapids, and I remember seeing commercials and or print ads or something where that was they were framing this new development on the west side as prestigious West Bloomington, and it really stuck. And so that is something I said, wouldn't it be fun to have that marketing genius come to a One Bloomington discussion so that he or she could hear what has really transpired after all these years and how that has impacted this community. Yep. Yeah, that would be kind of fun. So Eric, I've heard you say that you'd like people to include Bloomington in their discussions regarding living, working, and playing. Talk more about how do we get the message to people that are looking to either expand their current business, bring business in, new families, existing housing options, all of that, please.
Well, let me first start with this. So when it comes to the Twin Cities, and I'm a huge fan of the Twin Cities, so don't take this the wrong way. All research indicators, census and everything speaks to Minneapolis, St. Paul, Bloomington, right? So when you look at it, that's what you see. But the B tends to be sort of silent in the region. And I'm still trying to figure out, I'm not saying change it to, triple, whatever you want to call it, right? But I'm still trying to figure out why is it that the B is silent in the Twin Cities narrative when all research indicators, narratives defines the region as Minneapolis, St. Paul, Bloomington, right? This is what I gathered. Bloomington tends to not promote itself as much, right? And I think we have to start to change that. Back to my point about cities like anything else, if you're not adapting, ultimately you will die. You will come to be seen as a sort of has-been type city or community. So to answer your question, I think this begins with a compelling vision of what Bloomington can be in the future. I'm not talking about just a consolidated or comprehensive plan. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about an image of the assets in this town brought to life in a perspective that people will say, I'm going to Bloomington. A vision powerful enough that will say to existing property owners, wow, I want to redevelop my property. And that's important because Bloomington is a built-out city for all intents and purposes. So anything that's going to happen in the future is going to have to rely on existing property owners understanding the value of what is at stake in Bloomington. So to answer your question, how do we get them here? We take all of the great assets, and I'm gonna point them out to you. So the city has done a tremendous job on 3 redevelopment districts. So if you look at Bloomington, you will find one named Normandale, American, and South Loop. We're currently sitting in South Loop. The challenge we have is when you drop into the city. Once you come off the 494 and you start to drop into the city, we are dealing with an aging commercial corridor system and structure, aging infrastructure, aging homes. And I have to tell you, the age of the homes, you normally wouldn't tell they are that old because the environmental enforcement of the city and how they handle that process has actually worked to keep the properties in really good shape. So how do you take the strengths of these 3 districts and everything that's been happening, the powerful image of the Minnesota River Valley and linking together a vision of the core of the city, that is a powerful vision. How do we bring that to life and execute on some pieces in there and communicate that across the board from the school system, from the chamber to every entity to say, choose Bloomington as one of your choice cities in a region of competitive cities? I mean, if somebody can tell me something different than that, I would say, please tell me, because I think that is part of the equation that's going to get us there. And looking at what are we missing? What are we missing? Where are the incubators? Where are the pieces we need in town to start to drive new businesses? Or how do we capitalize on the anchor institutions? We have anchor institutions as in the universities and college in town, but we don't talk about that. I just had a presentation from Normandale and I was blown away at the economic potential that's sitting there, but we're not talking about it. We're not talking about it. So to really answer your question, we have to link those assets together, create a powerful vision, and basically get to work. That's how I see it.
That's great. 2 words for you? Brew pub. I think I've said that in probably every conversation with Kim so far. Just saying. Brew pub. You started to touch on some of the hot spots. If you wouldn't mind sharing with us some of the commercial nodes that you see that are ripe for redevelopment, and perhaps maybe a little bit about how we might get there.
Well, I think the important connection between the aging neighborhood commercial corridors, that would be the likes of Old Cedar and Shakopee, places like that, right? And the way the real estate market is performing today, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to come back as commercial. It may come back at a residential use with maybe some limited retail or something in there. But the challenge we face is the development world has bypassed those corridors. Because one would say the assembly of disconnected parcels, for example, having to consolidate that, dealing with bordering neighborhood concerns and issues, one would say, from a development perspective, I'm not going to deal with that. I'm going to go out to the green fields where there are greater opportunities and less stress to deal with. So if we really look at Bloomington, the core, I'm calling it the core because Bloomington is really starting to perform more like a core city versus a traditional suburban city. If you look at coming down Lindale, 98, wrapping back around to 494 American, there are about 5 of these corridors and about 2 or 3 of them situated outside of that. We have to make the case for those corridors to attract development and investment. That's important because the One Bloomington message and narrative is about how do we shrink and reduce this east-west divide in Bloomington. It's a real thing, it's talked about all the time, whether perception or reality, and there's this massive hole within the city that we have to pay significant attention to. So to answer your question, if there's one hot spot, the 494 and the American, South Loop, Normandale, I think that's going to do its thing. The issue is going to be the compelling case we make for the interior of the city. That's really the challenge. And I would say, based on experience, I've always been told, the former mayor of Pittsburgh, he said this to me some years ago, the steel mills were coming to an end in Pittsburgh. The community was up in arms about the mayor proposing a strategy to, okay, it's over, let's clean them up, let's take them down, let's get them prepared for development in the future. The community rallied, he created a plan, they voted him out of office. That plan today was not based on, well, we don't have the money to do it. It was based on a powerful vision that was going to drive investment to Pittsburgh in the future. So now those former steel mill sites are the likes of Google, there's an Apple presence there, there's research and development anchored by the universities. So now they're talking about building a statue of this mayor in Pittsburgh because of the foresight to create a vision plan that was powerful enough to draw in the type of investment attraction needed. Is it that scale in Bloomington? Maybe, maybe not. But we have to connect the dots in order to sort of sell Bloomington, so that B can be talked about in the Twin Cities discussion. Sorry.
The triple cities, absolutely. I've heard a statistic from either yourself or somebody else at the city that of the surrounding areas, Bloomington has we're the oldest community in terms of age of residents. And so one of the hot topics that I know we're all talking about is, because we're landlocked, everything's built up, how do we create an opportunity for more people to come in, and the development that I think the city council has been experiencing in these conversations, and more senior housing, more multi-unit, affordable housing. Can you talk about that? Because once we get our seniors situated to stay in Bloomington because they want to, and then we free them up from those homes that they've been occupying for so many years, bring in opportunities for new families. Talk a little bit about, because we are attracting some development in that sphere. Can you talk about that, please?
Yeah, first let me tell you a story. I was at the Bloomington Optimist Club a couple of weeks ago doing a presentation
Love the Optimists.
to the Optimist Club. What really stuck out, the seniors at that meeting said, because I think we have something like a 1% vacancy rate or whatever it is in Bloomington, right? So they mentioned multiple times, you know what, if we had a place to go, we would sell our homes. We would start to turn over that inventory, right? So the challenge we're facing, though, is in a landlocked or built-out city, it's going to come down to ability to acquire sites, take down, clear, redevelop those sites. But the issue of affordability is just not an affordability issue for the working population. It's one for the elderly population as well. And I can tell you firsthand in community development, on a monthly basis, we are responding to seniors who are aging in place that are facing issues that they cannot deal with, you know, fixing up their homes and things of that nature. So that is a real life challenge that we're facing. Now, as far as a built-out city goes, I see it as a positive. Some people will say, oh, we built out, oh, they're going to go to St. Louis Park, they're not going to choose Bloomington. It's not the fact that we are a built-out city. What we have to do is start, again, to look at existing property owners and start to make, again, the compelling case as to why they should redevelop or how we can create better partnerships to help them redevelop. When it comes to affordability, we've been talking about affordability as it relates to the wage issue. If you really want to understand affordable housing, look at the wage issue. Don't look at anything else but the wage issue. Compare what you're making to housing costs, and you will get a clear picture of what the housing affordability issue is. The problem we're facing is most developers, they want to build at this 120% above area median income. And they will say to communities, the market doesn't have space to do affordable housing. That is not accurate. If you drop to 80% of the area median income in Twin Cities, like 90,000, 80% of that, right? That is workforce housing. You drop to 60%, you're talking about people, regular people. We're talking about, you know, teachers, just regular people. But what happens is the market developers who only want to focus here because they have to rent increases will say there's no opportunity at this sort of other level. What we have to do is prove otherwise and start to work with what we're calling aligned developers that really understand it, right? So in Bloomington, you know, we're working on a series of affordable housing issues. We recently passed on Monday a 90-day tenant protection ordinance. And to understand what this means, there's a concept called NOAA properties, which is naturally occurring properties that because of their age, amenities, are being sold at a quick pace throughout the region and across the country. Bloomington has roughly 3,800 of these units. The average age is 1966. What's happening is investors and developers are finding that they can get larger rent escalation by acquiring these older properties and going in and painting and changing the cabinets and changing the rents right? That's what's happening across the region. So even with the older properties where there are some affordability, that's being taken off the market. But I will tell you this, our approach to addressing the affordable housing issue will be a balanced approach. What we don't want to do is tip that scale so far to the left or to the right that hampers development. We want a balanced approach that's going to look at it comprehensively. So in our approach, we will have economists, real estate experts studying the fiscal and financial impacts both on the city and on our economic position surrounding cities close to Bloomington, because what may happen in Bloomington can have an effect in Edina. So if we do something that's counter to development, they may say, oh, I can go do it in Burnsville, so I'm going to Burnsville. Or I'm going over to Apple Valley or wherever the case may be. So we're really working hard to try and create that balanced approach.
Thank you. Hopefully you guys are generating some questions in your head. We're going to have time for that in just a few minutes. But before I get to what the business community can do for you to help you and how we can support what you're doing, you know, you've said a couple of things where there have been some challenges. Now, I think that you're a lot like me, Eric. You're probably pretty pragmatic. You seem like a realist, but optimistic. I hear a lot of optimism in your voice. And that's how I am every day. I see things from a very realistic standpoint, but how can we take that up a notch, right? What kinds of things, what are the real challenges that you think we're facing or that you're facing for some of these ideas?
Creating a sense of urgency that battles the forces of complacency, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
What usually happens in this realm, the forces of complacency that will say, well, we like the way things are, their push is stronger than the sense of urgency to start to adapt. So we have to ratchet up the sense of urgency around, you know, what Bloomington wants to be in the future. And this is not to suggest that Bloomington has not been doing good things. Bloomington has done some great things, but at the same time, the world is changing, and it is changing really fast. We just have to be able to match or keep up with that pace. So the business community, for example. Business community, let's say getting involved in helping to understand, helping the city and whatever else we do understand the picture of what the needs are. What are we missing? What can we do to retain businesses? What can we do to attract more businesses to Bloomington? And I would say this, not just your traditional businesses, but how do we grow some organic businesses coming out of the community?
With hops and barley.
Right, well, yeah, okay. You know, but how do we actually do that? If I had it my way, I would love to get a resource base where we can have a massive business plan competition within Bloomington. Make the call, come with your best ideas, right? Put it on the table, and through our development projects we work on, how do we create strategies to start to reserve space for businesses that's looking to make the transition? We may need a bakery. Instead of getting a chain bakery, let's go get a bakery, you know, that's coming out of the community, right? We may need a flower shop. We may need something that's Amazon proof, that's going to survive the e-commerce blitz. But from the business community, helping us sort of really work on a strategy like that to sort of start to create some organic pieces within Bloomington. But more importantly, being a champion for Bloomington. And you know, it's tough because we're all part of the larger region, but at the same time, to be an effective region, you need strong cities operating within the region. So the business community helping us with that message. And I'm gonna go back to this vision again. This vision is not a picture that's drawn, it's a vision that captures true development potential, infrastructure, all of the great things that's happening in Bloomington. Like, what are we number one in? What are we number two in? What are we trending in? That needs to be communicated and shared amongst every institution within the community that can sort of propel that sort of energy. So that's what I think.
That's great. Before I turn it over, how do you see those things being communicated?
You mean the actual vision?
Yeah, how do you see, like, when we're ranked number one or when we're doing something really good, how do we get that message out into the community?
It is running in the libraries, it's running in the airport, it's a coming attraction at the movie theater. It's everywhere that you see it, that here's what Bloomington is. If I had a vision I could describe to you guys, it's like flying in an airplane. You're coming into Bloomington, you're flying over the Minnesota River Valley, you're making the curve, you're going down 494, you see our 3 development districts coming to life, you're spinning over by the Mall of America and the airport, and you wrap out the vision coming down the main corridor of the city, capturing everything that we have and communicating that to say, boom, Bloomington, and your choice of places to live, choose Bloomington, right? So that's what I'm talking about. It's that type of vision that propels people to say, if I have a choice, I'm going with the energy. Because if you go to a city and you cannot feel this energy, it's a good indication that that city is on a downward spiral, right? You have to understand that. You go to any American city or any European city, when you're walking around, if you don't feel it, you might as well say, you know what, it's heading in a downward sort of spiral. The opposite occurs when you go into a city and you feel the energy, it's on an upward trajectory. So that's kind of how I see it. So if the realization of a vision that's turning into development and whatever else, the true test would be over time, over a 5, 10, 15-year period, you know, set up by some metrics that we all can sort of track, and we start to feel that energy, then we know it's trajecting, it's going upward. And let me conclude with this. Bloomington has everything for everybody. I had a fantastic tour of Bloomington with the mayor, and it was about 4 hours. We're just driving to every nook and cranny, and you will be surprised the things you will see. I was, what is the cove or something, or you over this edge, it looks like you're looking over this vast sort of open area. To see that type of presence in an American city combined with really nice suburbs and other amenities, it's there. We just have to bring it to life. So that's how I feel. Look, let me just say this.
No, keep going.
I'm an intelligent optimist. I don't look at this stuff and say my thinking is unreal. I look at it from a realistic perspective, and I drive around and I'm salivating sometimes saying, man, look at this, but of course it takes money, it takes resources over time. But I do believe with a solid strategy over time, it will bear the fruit of attracting people to Bloomington, creating a greater sense of energy within our town. So I'll conclude with that.
Yeah, I'm cool with that too. And there's a lot of intelligent people in this room, and I'd like you all to have a chance. If you've got some questions, I don't know how far this will go. Actually, Ashley, could I? What's that? Oh, okay, Bruce, then you will volunteer to stand and hold the microphone, if you don't mind, for people coming up with questions. That would be so helpful, thank you. People have questions? Come on up. John, got a question? Verge, got a question?
Okay, thank you for your time, by the way.
Yep.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm a very, very long-time resident, and I could list positives about Bloomington forever. One of the dichotomies, one of the challenges I think we face as a city in trying to grow the population, and especially on the younger side, the youth side, is the fact that we have so much industry.
Yep.
We have grown our industry tremendously in Bloomington, but by doing that, we've limited the amount of places we can have homes. And there aren't very many new places we can build a home anymore. So the only way to grow it I see is to get people like me out of their homes into some other apartment or something smaller so that younger people can move in. But if you could find a way to overcome that challenge, God bless you.
Yep.
Who else has a question? Don't be shy. Thoughts, just ideas that were sparked while he was talking. Tim.
Favorite council member?
Tim Bussey.
Got a question?
Eric, we just permitted our 10,000 hotel unit.
Yep.
From everything over the last 5 months, how much further do you see that hospitality sector growing in Bloomington?
Good question.
Yeah, that's a good question because we're having this conversation this morning about the hotel industry, and what we're trying to figure out is what is really driving this, right? Is it the mall? We don't think so. Is it the airport? We don't think so. I just left the airport before I got here. We're having a conversation over there, and it looks like what's really driving this is the finance industry. So the hot product to finance today is hotels. It's just that simple, right? Hotels. Do we see a stoppage or coming to an end? We do think there's an end in sight, but it's ironic. It's just not happening here in the South Loop. It's happening in other parts of town that if we pitch any development concept, here comes a hotel. We're like, here comes another hotel, right? So we think that the number is going to start to slow down. Quite honestly, I don't have like a definitive answer. The only thing I can tell you is that it's not being fueled by the mall. It's not being fueled by the airport. It's being fueled by the finance industry saying, let's finance hotels. That's what I can say.
And I thank you for that question, and thank you for that answer. I was speaking with a hotel GM that I won't name earlier this week, and some concern about some glut here in the area and just oversaturation of rooms and making sure that they can all really continue to thrive. So that is some information that I can now, thank you, can share as hoteliers are coming to me. Who else? No, come on up. Please. We've got the music behind us.
To preface, Amy and I work in the apartment industry, so we are at a community that's about 350 apartments, so about 700-800 residents at any given time. Maybe this is more of an observation than a question, but we see frequently when, obviously the next step after renting is people move on to owning, and frequently our renters come to us and they're not looking to stay in Bloomington. They have not made that connection with the city where they want to find a house in the city. And so I feel like there's this gap between you have what is very often a younger demographic, and that's the people we were just talking about wanting to have in the city. But in that term, which is usually at least a year, the typical rent term is 2 years. They have 2 years to get grounded in the city, but they're not. How do you feel like we could be drawing in that demographic where they're not organically associated with the city through property taxes and utilities and those kinds of things that come out? How can they connect more where they will want to stay?
Yeah. Let me take that one. That's.
Would you please repeat the question?
I'm sorry.
We couldn't hear you. We couldn't hear you.
Yeah, the question was, there's like renters in Bloomington, some younger renters, and they have like about a 2-year window, to sort of really decide, am I going to plant a flag here? And what she's really getting at is they're not really making any connections to Bloomington, so they're going on to move to another community. And the question is, how do we get, those people to stay in Bloomington? And part of the answer is figuring out a way to put on the market a for sale product in the range of about $250,000. Whoever in this region can figure that out, the 250, 270, people will flock to their city because they are combing from every region of every area of the region to try and buy a home. So I think what we're doing, I can tell you what we're doing. We're combing every sector of the city, whether it's previous right-of-way, previous whatever, to see if we have the possibility to create any opportunities for home ownership. We're convinced that if you put this product on the market before you even got the ink dry on the paper, they will sell. And we think whoever does that in this region will start to retain some of those people and start to stay in the cities, stay in the city like Bloomington. And for Bloomington, rentals are good, but we need some form of ownership to really support the tax base within the city. But that was a good question.
So I'll play off on that. I think transit is another component for some of the younger generations. We have fantastic transit options getting north to south.
Let me talk about that.
Yep, and so thank you. We've got a lot of options to get from the downtowns to here, to the Mall of America. But here in Bloomington, we don't have as robust an east-west transit corridor. So if you've got something, please.
Okay, I'll give you my own personal experience. You know, we need restaurants. We need places to eat in Bloomington. I mean, you know, no disrespect to Edina, but I don't want to drive to Edina to have to go find something to eat, right? I mean, really. So you'll find me at Applebee's on Bendale because that's where I'm going. And I can tell you what we're hearing from the community is that they want more restaurants. I mean, we have a problem with that. And that goes to the independent restaurants, more something that's unique and authentic, right? You know what I mean, right? Patio, things that help you make the connection to wanting to be in the city. So even if you ride in the transit into Bloomington, you're going to look around and say, well, I'm not getting off because I don't have anywhere to go, right? Part of the challenge is how do we start to get, you know, greater choices. I don't want to drive down to Minneapolis and be in South Minneapolis and having a good time and say, oh, I got to go back to Bloomington. Nor do I do not want to move out of Bloomington because I think as the Director of Community Development, it's important for me to live in the city. If I'm trying to promote the city, I can't promote the city and I'm down in South Minneapolis, right? It's a contradiction. So it's about how do we create the pieces, you know, that can actually work. And I'll give you guys a real life experience we're going through, and I won't say the name of the restaurant. And Ken would appreciate this because he's in this business. You know, chain restaurants, for example, they have a footprint. And it's like, we're gonna plop it here. It could be the same in Bloomington, it's the same in Denver, it's the same everywhere. And when you're looking at these sort of restaurants, they're not really open to changing that footprint, right? So if we say, look, we want to have something that's going to push closer to the curve, let's hide the parking behind, make it feel like a place, it's hard to do that with chain established restaurants or anything. So the long story short is we have to figure out a way to get more eating establishments within Bloomington so that we don't have to go over to Edina and eat all the time. Right?
Yeah. Eat here if you can. Yes, yep, eat here if you can. Who else has a question?
Well, I'll just say you can start on the west side because there's nothing on Morlandale. Like from 84th Street all the way down to Old Shakopee and then going that way.
Nothing.
You got Zeke's way out on the other end, but Famous Dave's and Perkins moved out of the Normandale Village. My understanding it was because the rents got jacked up. So I don't know if that was true, but if we can get some development over in there, because I don't like to have to drive a real long way.
But let me say something else to that.
Yeah, good point.
To help that process, the city of Bloomington and the business community we have to make the case. And let me tell you what I'm talking about. In real estate market analysis, you count rooftops, you count populations, you know, you do all of this stuff. But what they traditionally don't do is capture the untapped potential that is not necessarily captured by a traditional market analysis, right? So we have to take the extra step to drill down further to help make the case, you know, for a retailer or a restaurant, whatever, that may want to consider. We want to be able to say, hey, we know you conducted your market study, we know you have your footprint or whatever, but however, did you know this other aspect of this community exists, right? We have to do a better job at looking at those dynamics to help drive some of this stuff to Bloomington, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Anybody else have anything they want to add? All right. This is great. Thank you again to the Hard Rock Cafe and the fabulous food that they have to offer. Thank you to Excel Energy. Michelle Swanson is such a fantastic supporter of the Bloomington area. Thank you to Work. Whoa, we've got Hard Rock Cafe again, everybody. And our friends with Northwestern Health Sciences U, Worksite Right, once again, please talk to these two about how you can incorporate some healthy, some tangible, healthy results for your staff, right, in your place of business. I have a couple of updates. Next conversations with Kim, we'll go back to the coffee format. And I've got invitations out to Congressman Eric Paulson, as well as his challenger, Dean Phillips. I'm looking to fill the slot in September and October, conversations with Kim, with each of those candidates. We're gonna do those separate so they each have a chance to address you all and have some opportunity for conversation with them. So look for that information. Also, mark your calendar for Business Day at City Hall. That is going to be a fantastic event. We're excited about that. And Eric, I hope that you all heard something that made you feel good. I also hope that you heard something that made you feel a little uncomfortable, because that's what change does. And it sounds like Bloomington is going to be moving, shaking, and changing, and also retaining the great reputation that we've had for so many years. It can be done. Yes, so thank you all for being here. Let's continue to converse and mingle. All right, great.